Hello and welcome to a very special How I Paint Things. Now what I've got whizzing around in front of me today is a Griffin from Battletech painted up in the Lyran Commonwealth colours. Now I'll be honest, I don't know Battletech all that well, so I did just cruise online and Google a colour scheme I like the look of, but luckily this method's going to work perfectly well for pretty much any colour scheme you want to cook up. Now this is based on something I did last week while stippling on the base colours for a speed paint or contrast method, and it's come out pretty well. So I'm quite happy with that result and wanted to share. So all of the paints for this will be listed in the description below, and I am going to be using speed paint markers for a few things, but it is just as applicable rather if you want to use brush and bottle stuff. So without any further mucking around, let's get started. So, to paint this sucker up, I'm going to do what mostly worked last time. What I've done is to prime him first of all in Raven Black from Colourforge, but any black primer will do. Raven Black just tends to show up nicely under the lights, which is important for you folks being able to see things. I've got a wee bit of pluck foam. As I've mentioned, this comes off of an audio dampening panel. You can get them really cheap on Amazon or anywhere that sells those funky studded bits of cloth. And I'm going to dip it into some ash grey from the Army Painter, and then dab some of that off onto some kitchen towel. Then we're going to start popping this over near enough everything. A little bit of texture like that will be perfect. So if I do get it into the recesses, I'm not too fussed because I know that some of it is going to be covered up by the speed paint that I'm using. But yeah, let's go ahead and base coat this fella with our funky little not quite brush. Now anywhere that I really can't reach with the foam but are still clearly visible, I'm just going to grab a little bit of ash grey on the brush and roughly fill those in. Try to match the stippled effect with my brush, which is not going to be perfect, but will look better than just black bits in the recesses. Then we'll do the same thing again with a fresh bit of foam and some white. But this time we're concentrating more on upper edges and parts where we want a lighter finish. Now on the right-hand side, yes, the right-hand side of the mech, I'm going to go a little bit heavier with this because this is the side that is going to actually be white. I'm quite liking how this looks so far. It's got an almost more gritty finish to it than dry brushing this on would do. So yeah, man, that's cool. Okay, nice and easy, that was quick, and I've just got a couple of little bits of fluff I need to pick off. What I'm going to do now is the easy part. I've got here, this is Broadsword Silver, and this time I'm going to go ahead and use the speed paint markers. There's no reason that you couldn't just use the regular speed paints, or indeed any other acrylics, but half the reason in having done this funky base coat style is so that the speed paints will show up a little bit more interestingly over the top. Now, Broadsword Silver is almost an opaque looking finish, so it's actually super useful for stuff like this. I'm going to add it to a few little details, like his gun, his fists, maybe one or two bits of the vents. Okay, now a little bit of grim black into some of these little sockets and things. I don't think I'm going to do very much of this at all, to be honest, and if you wanted to, you could probably save a step by just doing this in silver. Now, I'm not 100% certain about this. I would usually do this with a brush, but I'm interested to see if the markers are up to the job. I've got Hoplite Gold, and yeah, it turns out that tip is fine enough to do in the cockpit panels. Just going to wiggle it back and forth there, see what I get, and this one across the top. Now, the ones on the sides, I am not going to bother with. If you wanted to do a more precise version of this, then probably either use Hoplite Gold from the brush, from the pot, or get in there with a bit of gold paint. But that is going to look, that actually looks quite well, good, yeah. Now this bit finally is going to be the acid test. I have here Magic Blue, and what I'm going to do is to apply this first of all on one of the arm panels. Now I do find that in some areas what you can do with the markers is actually to turn it sideways, and you'll get quite a large brush effect. You don't have to work with the point the whole time. This is where I'm going to see whether or not this will actually work, and I think we might be onto a winner here. So as with any speed paint thing, work with an area at a time. because you don't want little tide marks showing up as one area dries before another. But I think, yeah, we're going to be all right with this. So I'm going to go over all of the blue, and there's a lot of it. But one thing I really want to see is the tip here going to be fine enough? Oh yeah, to paint in the cockpit. And I'm pretty pleased with how that's going to look. Now, at this point, I'm genuinely not 100% certain if the Holy White speed paint is actually going to be necessary. But because we are experimenting, let's go ahead and apply it anyway. This may change up how I would paint other mechs. But let's quickly blast over the white with this. Now, full disclosure, I have gone back over a couple of tiny spots of blue that I splashed on the white parts. With a little bit of white paint from the palette. But of course, that's just a natural part of tidy up. Now, as I'm applying this, I'll admit I'm not convinced. I might have been better off just to leave the white as I found it. But, you know, that's the point of an experiment. You really need to finish the job and see what the whole thing looks like in context before deciding whether or not to quit. So let's just take a couple of seconds here and polish off the Holy White. Now that has dried, and it's not quite what I had in mind. It is a little darker than I had intended. So what I'm going to do is to grab a flat edge dry brush and a bit of matte white, and we're just going to quickly flick along most of this to brighten it back up again. If I don't get a perfect edge here, I'm not really all that worried. I just want to lighten up the white. Now I'm going to do the same thing with a little bit of bright sapphire over the blue, but I'm going to be a bit more careful in how I apply this. Really just want to concentrate towards the edges with this, instead of brightening up the whole thing. Yeah, man, that's come out. I'm quite happy with that. What I am going to do, though, is to take them out and varnish them with a spray varnish before I go on to the weathering. Reason being, I want the safety of knowing that this is all sealed down and protected before I start scrubbing and doing weird stuff with other brushes. All right. Now what I'm going to do is go ahead and I'll start with a bit of dark tone, and I'm going to apply this over the silver parts. Now I'm doing this now because dark tone dries a little bit glossy, like there's a bit of shine to it once it is properly dried, and over a metallic stuff, that's going to work quite well. I like the look. So pop this on, let it dry. While that dries, as long as you're careful, we can go ahead and apply a little bit of strong skin shade over the gold. Now this is going to give it a bit of a shine, which I want, and it's also going to help fill in the edges around the blue. It'll look pretty cool. You can also use warm skin shade. Now, I've got a little bit of my pluck foam that I've torn down to next to nothing at the tip there because I want quite a lot of control over where this ends up. I'm dipping this into a bit of oak brown. This is going to be our sort of chipping and weathering stage for a little bit of battle damage. You do not want to add very much of this because it will quite quickly overpower a miniature this size. So where I talk about doing this on like full size, larger tanks and the like, you can be a little bit more generous with it. But here, don't go nuts. Okay, and finally with some plate mail metal, what I'm going to do is to pop in just a little bit of this into some of those chip bits. You don't have to do all of these, but some of them being dinged up will make them look a little fresher. And as well, I'm also going to highlight the metallic stuff with this. Now, once I'm finished, I'm satisfied with how this looks. What I'm going to do is go ahead and pop a base on them. And the recipe for that will be in the description. So let's get a look at what my little experiment here looks like when he is all done. And so there at last, our Griffin is complete. And I have to admit, when I opened the box and I first got a look at the miniature, I wasn't 100% impressed by the quality of the plastic. Now, that's just my first impressions. It did take a fair bit of knife work to clean up some of the mold lines, but once it's painted, I'm actually pretty happy with that. I think you probably wouldn't have need to have put as much fuss as I did into cleaning it up to get a decent result there. Now, obviously, that method's going to work for pretty much any color that you choose to. You could even do it straight from a white primer, but I think in that case, if you do, then the holy white would be a necessary step. I'm not 100% certain that it was necessary for this particular color scheme. I kind of like the finish all the same, but from white, you're definitely going to need a little bit of oomph in the shadows there. So thanks goes out to Exit 23 Games for the light and sound equipment, as well as all of my wonderful patrons who are keeping me ticking in paints and glue, which includes my gorgeous producers who are showing up on screen now. Thank you very much for your support, folks. Now, any questions or anything, feel free to drop them in the old comment box below. My Blue Sky and Instagram are both linked there too. So thank you for your time, one and all, and you all enjoy the rest of your day.